The September rain drummed against our kitchen window as I folded another load of laundry, the familiar rhythm almost meditative. Our suburban home in Denver felt especially quiet that afternoon, too quiet for a house that usually buzzed with the chaos of family life. My husband Robert was supposed to be at his accounting firm, working late again, something that had become increasingly common over the past few months. I was smoothing out one of my daughter's school uniforms when I heard the front door creak open, followed by light footsteps on the hardwood floor. Lucy was home from her piano lesson earlier than expected. Mom. Her voice carried from the hallway, small and uncertain in a way that immediately caught my attention. In the kitchen, sweetheart, I called back, setting down the tiny plaid skirt I'd been folding. Lucy appeared in the doorway, her 7-year-old face flushed from the cool autumn air. Her blonde curls, so much like mine had been at her age, were slightly damp from the rain. But it wasn't the weather that had brought tears to her bright blue eyes. Lucy, what's wrong? I knelt down to her level, my mother's instinct already on high alert. She fidgeted with the straps of her pink backpack, her lower lip trembling. Mrs. Patterson said I could come home early because I already knew all my pieces perfectly. That's wonderful, honey. You've been practicing so hard. I brushed a curl from her forehead, noting how she avoided my gaze. But something's bothering you, isn't it? Lucy nodded, fresh tears spilling over. I saw Daddy's car in the driveway when Mrs. Patterson dropped me off. My heart did a small skip. Robert had said he'd be at the office until at least 7. Maybe he came home early too, just like you did. I thought I'd surprise him, Lucy continued, her words coming faster now. I was going to show him the new song I learned. But when I went to the kitchen through the back door, she paused, wiping her nose with the back of her small hand. What happened, sweetheart? Mom. She was hugging Dad in the kitchen. The words tumbled out in a rush, followed by a sob that seemed too big for her small body. I felt the world tilt slightly, like when you miss a step going downstairs. She, Miss Jennifer from his work, the pretty lady with the dark hair who came to my birthday party. Lucy's voice dropped to a whisper. They were hugging for a really long time, and Dad was touching her hair. Jennifer Walsh, Robert's new assistant, hired 6 months ago, 32 years old, recently divorced, with a smile that lit up the room at office parties. I'd always thought she was lovely, had even invited her to Lucy's birthday party in August, wanting to include her in our extended work family. I pulled Lucy into my arms, my mind racing while I tried to keep my voice steady. Sometimes grown-ups hug when they're friends, honey. Maybe Miss Jennifer was upset about something and Daddy was just being nice. But even as I said the words, I felt their hollowness. Lucy was a perceptive child, wise beyond her years in the way that only children can be. If she thought something was wrong, if it had upset her enough to come to me crying, it didn't look like a friend hug, Mommy. Lucy's voice was muffled against my shoulder. It looked like the way you and Daddy used to hug when you thought I wasn't looking. Used to hug. The past tense hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time Robert and I had shared an intimate moment? When had we stopped looking at each other with anything beyond polite familiarity? I held my daughter tighter, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, trying to anchor myself in this moment while my world threatened to crumble around me. Outside, the rain continued to fall, each drop against the window like a tiny hammer driving home a truth I wasn't ready to face. Where are they now? I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Gone. Miss Jennifer left when I accidentally knocked over the recycling bin trying to get a better look. Dad came outside and helped me pick everything up, but he seemed different. Nervous, maybe? He said he was just finishing up some work stuff and that Miss Jennifer had stopped by to drop off some papers. I closed my eyes, feeling 17 years of marriage, of trust, of building a life together, suddenly seeming as fragile as tissue paper in the rain. That evening, I moved through our dinner routine like an actress playing a familiar role. I set the table with our everyday dishes, the blue ceramic set we'd received as a wedding gift from Robert's aunt, while Lucy chattered about her piano lesson and the upcoming school play. Robert arrived home at his usual time, briefcase in hand, tie slightly loosened, looking exactly like the devoted father and husband he'd always appeared to be. "Sorry, I'm a bit late," he said, kissing my cheek in the perfunctory way that had become our standard greeting. "Had to finish up some quarterly reports." I watched his face carefully, searching for any sign of guilt, of deception. But Robert had always been good at compartmentalizing. It's what made him an excellent accountant, and apparently what was helping him navigate whatever the situation with Jennifer had become. "Lucy mentioned she saw you earlier," I said casually, spooning mashed potatoes onto his plate. "Something about coming home for some work papers." For just a moment, his fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Oh, yes. Jennifer needed some files for tomorrow's client meeting. It was easier for her to swing by here than go all the way back to the office." The lie came so smoothly that I wondered how many others there had been. How long had I been living in this carefully constructed fiction? After dinner, while Robert helped Lucy with her homework at the dining room table, I found myself standing at the kitchen sink, staring out at our backyard. The maple tree we'd planted when we first moved in 15 years ago now towered over the fence, its leaves a brilliant orange in the fading light. I remembered Robert joking that we'd grow old watching that tree, that someday our grandchildren would play beneath its branches. "Mommy." Lucy appeared beside me, her math worksheet completed. "Are you okay? You seem sad." I knelt down to her level again, this remarkable little girl who saw too much, understood too much. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings, sweetheart. But I want you to know that whatever happens, it's not your fault, and both Daddy and I love you very much." Her brow furrowed with concern far too mature for her age. "Is this about the hug?" Before I could answer, Robert's voice called from the living room. "Lucy, come help me pick out tomorrow's clothes for school." She hesitated, looking between me and the direction of her father's voice, then squeezed my hand once before running off. I stood there in the growing darkness, listening to their voices, his patient and warm as he helped her choose between two sweaters, hers bright with the uncomplicated joy of a child who still believed her world was secure. Later that night, after Lucy was tucked into bed with her stuffed elephant and a promise that I'd check on her before I went to sleep, I sat across from Robert in our living room. He was reviewing spreadsheets, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, looking so familiar and yet suddenly like a stranger. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up, and in that instant I saw something flicker across his face. Fear, guilt, resignation. He knew. About what? But his voice lacked its usual confidence. About Jennifer Walsh. The spreadsheets slipped from his hands, scattering across our coffee table like falling leaves. For a long moment, we just looked at each other across the small space that suddenly felt like a chasm. "Megan, Lucy saw you together today. In our kitchen." My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling. She came to me crying because she didn't understand what she'd witnessed between her father and another woman. Robert's face went pale. He pulled off his glasses and rubbed his eyes, suddenly looking every one of his 43 years. "It's complicated." "How long?" The question came out sharper than I'd intended. 2 months. Maybe 3. He couldn't meet my eyes. It started innocently, just working late together, grabbing dinner after long days. She was going through her divorce, needed someone to talk to, and you decided you were that someone. "I never meant for this to happen, Megan. You have to believe that." I studied his face, this man I'd loved since college, whose child I'd carried, whose dreams I'd supported through the lean years when he was building his practice. But it did happen, and now our 7-year-old daughter is asking me why Daddy was hugging another woman like he used to hug Mommy. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of 17 years together and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended reality. On the surface, we maintained our routines. Robert went to work. I continued my freelance graphic design projects from home. Lucy attended school and piano lessons. But underneath, our family was quietly coming apart at the seams. I found myself analyzing every interaction, every late night at the office, every business dinner that had kept him away. The signs had been there. I realized the new cologne, the way he'd started going to the gym more regularly, how he'd become increasingly protective of his phone. I'd attributed these changes to a midlife desire for self-improvement, even felt proud that my husband was taking better care of himself. On Thursday afternoon, I was working on a logo design for a local bakery when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jennifer's name. My finger hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, to avoid this conversation entirely. But another part, the part that had been growing stronger since Lucy's tearful confession, needed to hear what she had to say. "Hello, Jennifer." "Megan." Her voice was soft, nervous. "I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. I think we need to talk." I stared out my home office window at the neighbors' golden retriever chasing leaves in their yard. Such a normal, innocent scene that it felt surreal given the circumstances. "I think we do too." We met at a small cafe in Cherry Creek, neutral territory away from both our usual haunts. Jennifer was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table, her dark hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger, more vulnerable. She'd chosen to wear minimal makeup, I noticed, perhaps an attempt to appear less threatening, more human. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. I ordered a black coffee, needing the bitter edge, the clarity. "Lucy saw you and Robert together on Tuesday." Jennifer's composure cracked slightly. "I know. Robert told me." "Megan, I'm so sorry. We never wanted." "What did you want?" I interrupted, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "When you started whatever this is with my husband, what exactly were you hoping would happen?" She stared into her untouched latte, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "Honestly, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was lonely, getting divorced from someone who'd been cheating on me for years. Robert was kind, a good listener. He made me feel valued." The irony wasn't lost on me. "So you decided to do to another woman what had been done to you." "It wasn't like that. It's not like that." She looked up, and I could see genuine distress in her brown eyes. "I know how this looks, how it sounds. But what Robert and I have, it's real. We understand each other. He's married. He has a child." "I know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Believe me, I know. We've talked about it constantly. We've tried to end things multiple times. But what? You just can't help yourselves." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice now. Jennifer winced. "I know you must hate me. I would if I were in your position. But I need you to understand that neither of us planned this. Sometimes feelings just happen." I thought about Robert and me, how we'd met in college, how effortless and right everything had felt in those early years. Had I been naive to think that kind of connection was unique, irreplaceable? Or had we simply grown apart so gradually that neither of us noticed until it was too late? "Where does this leave us?" I asked. "All of us, I mean. You, Robert, me, Lucy." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. Robert's torn apart about Lucy, about hurting you. But he's also," she trailed off, seeming to realize she was about to say something that would only cause more pain. "He's also what? In love with you." She nodded, unable to speak. I sat back in my chair, feeling strangely calm. The worst thing that could happen, my husband falling in love with someone else, had already happened. There was an odd relief in having it finally spoken aloud. "I see." I finished my coffee, the bitter taste matching my mood perfectly. "Well, thank you for being honest with me, I suppose. What happens now?" Jennifer asked. Now I go home to my daughter and figure out how to hold her world together while mine falls apart. I left Jennifer sitting at the cafe, tears streaming down her face, and drove home through the familiar streets of our Denver neighborhood. The autumn light was golden and soft, the kind of afternoon that usually filled me with contentment. Instead, I felt like I was seeing everything for the last time. Our life as we'd known it was ending, and I had no idea what would come next. 3 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office. The divorce papers spread across the mahogany desk like the remains of a life I'd once thought was permanent. Susan Martinez had been my college roommate before becoming one of Denver's most respected family attorneys. Her presence was both comforting and surreal. It seemed impossible that I was here, in this situation, making these decisions. The custody arrangement Robert's proposing is actually quite fair, Susan was saying, her voice professional but gentle. 50-50 physical custody, no child support since your incomes are roughly equal, and he's agreeing to keep Lucy on his health insurance. I nodded, trying to focus on the practical details when all I really wanted to do was scream. What about the house? He's willing to sign it over to you entirely in exchange for his 401k remaining untouched. Given that Lucy's stability is the priority, keeping her in the same home, the same school district, seems like the best option. Through Susan's office window, I could see families walking along the 16th Street Mall, bundled up against the November chill, children skipping between their parents with the kind of unconscious security I desperately wanted to preserve for Lucy. Speaking of Lucy, she'd been remarkable through all of this, in the way that children often are when their world is shifting beneath their feet. We'd sat her down together, Robert and I, and explained in age-appropriate terms that sometimes grown-ups who love each other very much find that they're better as friends than as married couples. That both Mommy and Daddy would always love her, that she would have 2 homes but the same amount of family. She'd listened with those serious blue eyes, asked a few practical questions about where her stuffed animals would live and whether she could still have sleepovers with her friend Chloe. Then she'd hugged us both and asked if we could still have pizza nights sometimes, all together. Can we make sure pizza nights are included in the custody agreement? I asked Susan, only half joking. She smiled, the first genuine expression she'd shown all afternoon. I think we can work something out. That evening, I picked up Lucy from her after-school program, and we drove to the grocery store together. It was a mundane task, but these ordinary moments had become precious to me, proof that life continued, that we were building something new even as the old structure crumbled. Mom, Lucy said as we navigated the cereal aisle, "Is Dad going to marry Miss Jennifer?" The question caught me off guard, though I supposed I should have been expecting it. Lucy had an uncanny ability to cut straight to the heart of complicated adult matters. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday. How would you feel about that?" She considered this seriously, comparing 2 boxes of cereal with the focus of a Supreme Court justice. "I think she's nice. She brought me that book about horses for my birthday, remember? And she laughs at Dad's jokes, even when they're not funny." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. She does do that. But I hope she knows that she can never be my mom. I already have the best mom. Lucy looked up at me with such fierce loyalty that my heart nearly broke all over again. "Oh, sweetheart." I knelt down right there between the Cheerios and the Lucky Charms, pulling her into a hug that was probably too tight. "You're going to make me cry happy tears right here in the grocery store. Is it okay if I like her, though? Miss Jennifer, I mean." I pulled back to look at my daughter's earnest face, marveling at her wisdom, her capacity for navigating complex emotions that many adults struggled with. "It's not only okay, it's wonderful. The more people who love you, the luckier you are." That night, after Lucy was asleep, I sat in my home office, soon to be just my office, working on a new project. A local nonprofit had hired me to design materials for their mentorship program, connecting divorced mothers with women who were further along in their healing journey. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I found the work meaningful, hopeful even. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Thank you for handling everything with so much grace. I know I don't deserve it." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. We both deserve happiness. Let's just make sure Lucy gets to keep her childhood. His reply came quickly. Always. Pizza Friday this week. Always, I typed back. Outside my window, the maple tree stood bare against the winter sky, its branches reaching up toward stars I couldn't see through the city lights. In a few months, it would bloom again, the same tree, but somehow transformed. I was beginning to understand that maybe that's how all healing works. Not becoming something entirely new, but finding the strength to grow again from the same roots, reaching toward light that's always been there, waiting to be discovered. The divorce would be final in 3 months. Jennifer and Robert had found an apartment together across town, close enough for easy custody exchanges, but far enough to give everyone space to adjust. And me? I was learning to sleep in the middle of our king-size bed, to make decisions without consulting anyone else, to rediscover who Megan was when she wasn't defined by being someone's wife. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was becoming a life I could be proud of, one built on honesty, resilience, and the unshakable love I shared with a little girl who saw the world clearly enough to know that sometimes the best thing you can do for people you love is let them find their own way to happiness, even when that path leads away from you. In the end, Lucy's innocent observation, Mom, she was hugging Dad in the kitchen, hadn't destroyed our family. It had simply revealed that our family was ready to evolve into something different, something that honored the love we shared while acknowledging the love we needed to find elsewhere. And as I sat there in the quiet house, listening to the familiar sounds of our neighborhood settling into night, I realized that maybe that was enough. Maybe that was even beautiful in its own complicated human way.